Okay, so Josep Maria Jujol, 1879-1949. He was born on this day, the 16th of September in 1879. So, you know, I took this short biographical note about him from Wikipedia. Was a Catalan architect. Jujol's wide field of activity ranged from furniture designs and painting to architecture. He worked with Antoni Gaudí on many of his most famous works. Among Jujol's projects are Casa Batlló, Casa Mañach, Parc Güell, and Our Lady of Montserrat, and among his design styles, modernism and Art Nouveau. Now, you know, from this description, you would say that these 4 projects that I mentioned there, they were all almost exclusively his. It's not true. But he worked together with Gaudí, and I understood Antoni Gaudí valued him very much. And there are apparently some influences coming from Jujol on Antoni Gaudí in the use of color and some, you know, ornamental design. So he was described as Gaudí's light-hearted collaborator. I don't know if he was so light-hearted, but if this means that he kind of lived, you know, in the shadow of Antoni Gaudí, then yes, maybe yes. One of the most subtle, original, unprejudiced, and provocative personalities of contemporary art. This is how this person described him, Carlos Flores. So it's not a little thing, most subtle, original, unprejudiced, and provocative personalities of contemporary art. Well, contemporary art, meaning from the time when Jujol lived. And there are all kinds of websites where you can find his work. So he is acknowledged, he is known, but being that, you know, he lived and worked in the shadow of Antoni Gaudí, you know, some people thought and think that he was so-called unlucky. This was the man, you know, there are such people, there are such architects that we do not quite know of, but without whom probably certain buildings, maybe important buildings, would not have come into being. And I think he is one of such architects. There are very interesting architects that are a little less known. I think those architects should be known. He, you know, he brought in the collaboration with Antoni Gaudí a certain exuberance which complemented or added to the exuberance that Antoni Gaudí had already himself. Maybe he didn't need an additional exuberance, it's possible, but you'll see the work of Josep Maria Jujol that it can be indeed very exuberant. So Casa Batlló, in collaboration with Antoni Gaudí in Barcelona, 1906. He decorated the first floor and created the sacras and added ceramic on the building's facade. Well, this is not a little thing, you know, I mean, all that ceramic that was added to the building's facade was a major significant artistic contribution. I'll show you images of this well-known building. Of course, for the rationalists of today, for the functionalists of today, this kind of architecture is almost unacceptable because, first of all, we got rid of ornament. So today's architect cannot even imagine indulging in this kind of, you know, colorful ornamentation, capricious even, you know. And I think it's a loss. In my opinion, it is a loss. We simplified excessively our architecture to the point of having no pleasure in doing it, in making the project and building. Now, Casa La Pedrera from 1908. So this one battle was in 1906. La Pedrera was 1908. So 2 years later, he also collaborated with Antoni Gaudí and ornamented the main apartment, finished the chimneys, which are indeed in themselves an unbelievable work, designed the high relief plaster bands that surround the wooden door frames. Here are images from the construction of this very important work, which is correctly authored in the history of architecture by Antoni Gaudí, but Gaudí didn't work alone. And someone like Jujol was a significant presence in the coming into being of this building. Now look at these chimneys, you know. I mean, I only know of another. If I am to compare this work with the remarkable chimneys on the top of the La Pedrera, I would think of the chateau that François Premier built. You know, I was here on the top of this building and I know how it is. It's magical. People meet here in the evening, at least before the pandemic, and there are concerts and talks and all the rest. You see already here some people, a group of people. It's remarkable that it's if you consider this as some kind of a ground floor from which these surrealist chimneys emerge, you really have a very special feeling. Not that you are on the terrace of a building, but that you are actually on a superior plane of existence somehow. And the views also of Barcelona from here are remarkable. You see people that are everywhere because this part. Now, I am asking you, how many people in today's world with our buildings go to the terraces of our blocks of flats and have moments of, aesthetical pleasure or dreaming or contemplation? There is nothing to see on our prosaic functionalist terraces, nothing. There is nothing. While here is everything or almost everything. So I wonder, shouldn't we reconsider, our buildings in the sense that the transition from the building to the sky or to the above is meaningful and aesthetically enticing? Why is it that we don't do it? Because we don't have the money? That might be a reason, but I don't think it's just that. Because even in the architecture schools, no one does something like this. And in the architecture school, you do a project which is not going to be built anyway. So, the question of having money or not is totally irrelevant. And yet, no student would do something like this. And the question is why? Plus, we do not take into consideration the force, the mythical force almost of fire, because a chimney is connected with fire. What is fire for us? It's just a banal radiator, hanging somewhere, under the, a window or something on a certain wall. That's all there is. I think we actually kill architecture in this way, because it's not by accident that Gaudí did what he did here on top of La Pedrera. There is an entire universe here, which is imaginative. It could be also mythical, it's surrealist, it's provocative, it's inspiring. And these things are not small. I mean, you see the size of human beings. These are giant chimneys that in a way celebrate the growing of the building. They are mysterious. They are like, mythical archetypal figures abstract, but also organic somehow, and each one is different. I think they are very, very interesting. And again, they are very big. You see here the silhouettes, the human silhouettes. Anyway, it seems Jujol had a hand here. What exactly he did, we don't know, but we just read that he worked on the chimneys on the roof of La Pedrera. Really, when I see something like this, I feel dwarfed by the smallness of my age, by the banality. I mean, yes, we can do interesting things. We have parametric design, we have scripting and programming, but still, most of our buildings are very banal. Very few people do fluid architectures. Jujol did it, and Antoni Gaudí did it, you know, more than 100 years ago. So don't think it's just a question of the means, it's a question of our goals, of what we intend to do. Again, why did Gaudí, why did Jujol do these things? To complicate their lives? Well, if art means complicating one's life, then yes. But they left something behind that is still very, in my opinion, very, very inspiring. The measurable, so to speak, function, the concrete function of these chimneys is, you know, to let fume out, you know, but look at them, they become all of a sudden, you know, powerful, you know, presences, I mean, artistic, sculptural. And if Jujol did just this, and he would have deserved our celebration today. This is creativity. This is letting imagination work. This is pleasure. This is invention. This is everything architecture should be and is not so very often, as you know, because in the so-called common practice, it wouldn't even cross your mind to do something like this. And I think this is happening because we neglect the relationship between the earth and the sky, to express myself very simplistically in a way. We simply neglect it. We don't think about it. Well, this is not what Antoni Gaudí did, and this is not what Jujol did. And you can imagine there was a lot of work here, not just the architects, the so-called planners. After all, how can you make working drawings for what is here? They had craftsmen who, I don't imagine that Jujol with his hands put every single piece of ceramic here. No, he had collaborators, there were workers, there were craftsmen who worked together for this beautiful so-called other architecture on the roof of La Pedrera. Bravo to them. Now, Patronat, Obrer, Theatre in Tarragona, 1908. Here we see his touch again. You know, it's, you know, you would say, what's so great or significant about this? Well, I think it is, because in an otherwise, you know, possibly, you know, rather commonplace or banal interior, he introduced the mystery of what architectural poetry is. And this is what he did here. Maybe here is a little bit more, you know, predictable, but not this one. This one is a creation in itself. And I think we need such things. But again, you know, they are not, these architects were not rationalists. They were not functionalists. They understood that life without beauty is not to be lived. And they try to oppose the lack of what we call beauty. Yes, you know, the steps are similar to what we do today. The chairs, perhaps, I mean, these are new, the ceiling, but there are these interventions, these exceptions to the rule, even the pictorial intervention, you know, who would think today to do something like this with flowers and leaves and so on, with various colors? I don't think there are many who would. Anyway, look at the ceiling. Why would they do that? Why would he do this ceiling? And my question is, why not? You know, you would say, well, it's nonsense. You know, it could very well be flat and cheap, and that's it, basta. Well, you know, then we say goodbye to architecture. You might like it, you might not like it, but you cannot be indifferent to it, as you would vis-a-vis a hanged, you know, hanging ceiling, a flat hanging ceiling. It's an event. This ceiling is an event. It's provoking you. It makes you think. You know, you might not like it. It depends on the subjectivity of your likings, but you cannot be indifferent to it. It's memorable. You remember it. Why? Because it has personality. It has uniqueness. As these fragments of this wall, as it's just a wall, but look here, you know, with this ceiling and this edge of the wall, and even this, all of a sudden, this room has character, is unique, is different, it says something. It makes you stop. It makes you wonder. It makes you contemplate. So, what can we say? Torre, Sansalvador in Barcelona, 1909, 1915. In 1909, Josep Maria Jujol received an order from Dr. Sansalvador to build a summer house on this place in the neighborhood of Gracia, along with another tower for rent. But an unexpected discovery during the construction process twisted plans. They found a water mine with alleged radiological and medicinal properties that the doctor intended to market under the Agua Radial brand, announcing its health benefits. For this reason, Sansalvador changed his initial plan and built some access grottos to the well with the intention of bringing water to the bottling plant and the romantic garden that integrated them into the natural environment. The water was not as miraculous as I thought, or he thought, and the project did not work. I don't know where I took this text from. It was some time ago, but what I see, I like. It's something in between architecture and archaeology, between a ruin and you know, a new building. I think he did a marvelous job. You know, it's provocative, it's interesting, it's cultural, and what else can I say? Here is the same thing. I don't know. Finca Salvador, cuando la radioactividad era buena. It's part of this, you know, ensemble, this complex. He built also this building. And you see, you know, even this was not a major investment, so to speak. But look, the gate, the openings here in this facade, the windows, they all are eventful. They all say something, you know, even at the top. And I think mainly this is because, look at this so-called detail here, you know. This is what happens when you do not say no to ornament. You have the chance to bring in a richness which otherwise with great difficulty might be there, because in my opinion, architecture is not just about space. We are obsessed with space and nothing else but space. But space, I mean, you know, what is so remarkable about the space here? We have a, you know, a facade, we have a wall with an opening on it. It's not really about space. It's about the character, the personality of the wall, the artistry of carving the opening into that wall. This is also ornamental. So, you know, there is a lot of ornamental work here, which gives personality and character to what we look at. Why is it that we reject ornament these days? I mean, this was built around the time when Adolf Loos was accusing the ornament of being a crime. But in my opinion, structuralism or excessive concern with structure in the absence of the ornament could also lead to a crime. The crime of the cold, blunt, sterile obsession with structure. Structure and the structure and structure leads to inevitably to coldness and sterility, repetition, rationalism, boredom. Ornament is important as an expression of contemplation, the contemplative side of life, which is a reality. I mean, again, it's a small facade. Its dimensions are not, you know, a giant, and yet it's eventful. I feel like stopping. If I pass by on that street, I feel like stopping. Perhaps not so much to look at that motorcycle, but to look at that facade. And then, of course, there is the tectonics of the work. You know, the heaviness and I would say the beauty of the stone, the beauty of the brick. We see the intervention of the architect or the craftsman who helped the architect carve in a certain way this arch. These are interesting things that we don't do any longer, you know, obsessed as we are with efficiency and, you know, rationalism and so on. I think it's a very nice work, you know, and it's an architecture which does not dwarf nature, but collaborates with nature and collaborates with the earth, collaborates with the stone, collaborates with the sloping land. I think it's a very skillful work. And also inside, look what is inside. Look at this cellar. You know, look at the brickworks. You know, I mean, Antoni Gaudí also did amazing things where you wouldn't expect it to be amazing. Here is, I mean, you know, again, I think we impoverished architecture to the point of despair with our rationalism. Who would do something like this in the cellar? No one today, really no one. We'll say this is expensive, or we don't have the craftsmen, we don't have the bricks, why should we be playful like this? Why should this support be like this and not vertical? Because we think that supports can only be vertical, which is not true. Anyway, the imagination that they had is overwhelming, and for me at least, it dwarfs me, it humiliates me. I mean, it elevates me on one hand, but I also feel that, you know, I feel bad about my time because we truly impoverished architecture terribly. In general, I'm not saying that there are no exceptions, but look at the ironwork. You know, I mean, you know, we wouldn't do something like this. We'll think it's old-fashioned or mad or nobody can build it or who knows what. Look at the brickworks. Both rational or logical, but also with ornamental virtues. Bravo to Jujol. And look at this. Again, who would do something like this on the skin of a wall today? No one. No one. And yet, you know, we are not so removed in time from the time when Jujol built. Or look at this. You know, the functionalist and the rationalist would just put a pipe here and that's it. But now this opening into the wall in the hands of Jujol became an event, and an interesting event, plastically, artistically, aesthetically. Yeah. (1909), La Casa del Guarda. Very nice. Even in very old pictures, faded pictures. And look at this, the mystery of the insinuation of architecture, meaning here, because this is done with human willfulness, and then the grotto, you know, the earth with this telluric power. And I like this, you know, this tension between the natural conglomerate, the natural rock, and then, human imagination and geometry, but also, also in a way, a certain capriciousness. I like it very much because it's interesting, it's enticing, it's provocative. An architecture which is not taking you by surprise, which is not, as Renzo Piano said, it's not provoking an emotion, it doesn't deserve the name of architecture. That's the truth. Look how beautifully this stair is done with this arch, asymmetrical arch that supports it, and the smaller one here. Everything is an invention. Even the handrail, so simple, so elegant, and yet, functioning very well. I'm sure he worked with the great craftsmen, people who also had pleasure because they work creatively, meaning they also invented while they placed a brick above another brick. Now, another house, Casa Mañach in Barcelona, 1911. This is, I don't know if it still exists. I don't know exactly what it was, like a small store, a boutique. But look, it's surreal. You almost think it's, a scene from a movie. It doesn't seem to be real, but I think it's very interesting. And again, is the artist in the architect who did this. And I think it is high time to give birth again to the artist in the architect, because the architect became really very, very dry in the name of functionalism and rationalism. Look here, the ceiling. You might say it's excessive. Yes, it is excessive, but it doesn't leave you indifferent. It's a small space. So again, what is the great spectacle of space here? It's not the space. It's just one room, but because the walls and the wall and the ceiling are so complex and contorted and even tormented, the whole room becomes charged with its specific personality. And look at the facade. Again, what would the minimalist say? The minimalist would suffocate. The minimalist would say, this is unbearable. I have to leave. Well, you can leave. We would be very happy if you leave, sir. Anyway, Jujol, bravo to him. That's all I can say. Güell, in collaboration with Antoni Gaudí in Barcelona from 1911 to 1913, he decorated the benches and ceilings with ceramic fragments, possibly created the medallions in the hypostyles hall. So 1911, 1913, you know this park. It belongs to Antoni Gaudí, so to speak. He's the author, but as we read, Jujol decorated the benches and ceilings, which are perhaps the most interesting aspects of this work are exactly the benches, and to a lesser extent, the ceiling and the ceramic fragments and the medallions in the hypostyle hall. But the benches, in my opinion, are very interesting. And, can you make the working drawing for something like this? Of course not. You cannot. Here you need the artist with a big heart and with talent and with imagination and with enthusiasm to take broken plates and play with them ad hoc, spontaneously, as he feels like it. Of course, there was no project for this. Who could make the project for something like this? But it's beautiful because it is spontaneous, it is colorful, it is capricious, it is imaginative. It's a famous work. Yes, he did that. broken plates. Why did they need to introduce such figurative elements here, or abstract? They are both. Well, why not? Because life also is dreamy. There is a dreaming world in life. If we ignore our dreams, of course, we will never imagine building something like this. But that's not what Antoni Gaudí and Jujol did. They didn't ignore the world of dreams as we do. We do, that's the truth. We don't listen to our dreams. In fact, we don't dream any longer. You know, our dreams are with T-square and the rectangle at the most. If you can dream with the right angles and with the T-square and the rectangle. It's a whole world just in the interplay between these ceramic fragments. And what is significant and beautiful here is the chance, the aleatory presence of art. This is an art done not with premeditation, but spontaneously and in an aleatory way. And I think it works very well. Now, maybe here and there was a little bit of willfulness, like in these medallions that were mentioned in the hypostyle hall. But all in all, it's an artistic work. And it was the artist in Jujol and the artist in Antoni Gaudí and the artists in the craftsmen who helped them, because I don't think this was done just with, you know, Antoni Gaudí and Jujol, who made this possible. Now, Torre de la Creu, San Juan de Despí, Barcelona, province of Barcelona, 1913, 1916. So this was done about 10 years before Villa Savoie by Le Corbusier was built, the white manifesto of Le Corbusier. So this thing became the architectural testing laboratory of Josep Maria Jujol. And for this reason, his footprint is clearly visible in the municipality of, sorry, I'm not reading it because I don't know how to pronounce it. A good example of the architect's unlimited creativity is the Tower of the Cross, popularly known as the Tower of the Eggs because of the shape of the domes. The building was built between 1913 and 1916 as a summer residence commissioned by these people. The architects owned. The commission left the architect free, except for the fact that they were to be two twin houses for his sons, Juan and Luis. It consists of 5 cylinders, all of different sizes and heights, which accommodate the rooms of the home. To get there, you have to climb a spectacular spiral staircase, proof of the Jujoli style, loaded with curves and asymmetrical shapes. The domes of the ceiling are also very peculiar and show the dominance that the Tarragona man had of the Trencadis. I don't know what these are. Since 2003, the building has been listed as a cultural asset of national interest. How many buildings that we erect today have the ambition to become cultural assets of national interest? Now, the building is maybe a little bit too fairy tale-like, you know, almost like a gingerbread house, especially for someone from looking from the 21st century. I would agree. I'm not extremely enthusiastic about these mushroom heads, or I don't know how to call them. It has something of a gingerbread house, and this, in my opinion, is problematic. But inside, you'll see, I hope, some images from the inside. There are some very interesting things. You also have to understand that we are conditioned by our systems, even aesthetical systems. We grew up, you know, with a certain education in a certain climate. So certain exotic architectures might be too exotic for us. But look at this parapet. I showed just 2 days ago or so, well, on the 13th of September, when was the birthday of Tadao Ando, a large number of his buildings. And I was commenting on the forgive me, the mundanity and even the banality of his parapets, of his stairs, just glass, plain glass and nothing else. Well, here the parapet is a creation in itself. It's rich, it's complicated, it's complex, it's organic, it's alive, in other words, you know. And, you know, personally, my heart goes for this, not for those glass parapets which have nothing in them except the, you know, the peculiarity of a glass that is so strong that you are not afraid that you might break it or you might fall through it from the stair. This, you know, this parapet makes the architecture alive in this space. The parapet is a major force here because it is, as you see it, it's organic, it's complex, it has you know, a certain, I mean, the continuity is willed, it's obvious, but also seems to be a little bit here and there fragmented somehow. So it's a verity in unity. It's a work that is crafted by human hands and not by the machine. It is not even imagined by, I mean, how could we say imagined by a machine? The spirit that generated it was not the automatism of a, you know, of a machine age or machine. It's subjective, it's artistic. How else can we put it? And we don't do this sort of thing these days, very rarely, if at all. Look, even the frame of the doorway, you know, it's itself, although it might not be a, you know, so-called major doorway or door, but it is eventful, it's studied, it's designed, it's asymmetrical, it's engaging. And this is important, in my opinion. Now, it is true that at that time, there was also the manual ability of the workers who built this. Today is almost impossible, I imagine, to find such workmen, such craftsmen. I mean, look at these things, these elements here. You know, this is artistry. This is not done easily. It's done by people who know what they are doing and who also have an artistic sensibility. Because again, I don't think you can do this sort of thing, you know, I mean, for all these details to do working drawings. I just don't think it's possible. The exterior is not one that I find extremely even plausible, but it is what it is. The plan, what can we say? If you take just a part of it, almost reminds you of the private residence of Konstantin Melnikov in Moscow. But there is this aspect of the duality. There are two apartments, I guess, and anyway, here they are, the plans. I guess each floor is a little bit different from the other floors, although the differences seem to be very small. With the exception of the interior, I don't think this is one of his major works, but I still had to show it, of course. I love the stair, it's true. I mean, there are many spirals in the world of stairs in the world, but here is more than just a spiral. You know, it's the craft, the Art Nouveau you know, touch. Even there is even an element of, I risk now saying a slight expressionist, perhaps. Anyway, another house from 1914. This is a part of the frontal, I mean, the street, you know, the urban fabric is an insertion between other buildings. But even here, you know, look at this wall. You know, there are these delicate drawings on the wall, which are ornamental, of course, Look at this, a small aesthetical capriciousness here that he allowed himself. All these things give character and poetry to this facade. Otherwise, irrationally speaking, it would have been just another urban facade, nothing special about it. I think it became special exactly because of the artistic interventions. I mean, compare this with this building. Well, and I imagine this one as well. Here, there was a man with an artistic sensibility. He was an architect, and his name was, you know his name, Josep Maria Jujol. Really, I believe that we should welcome back the ornament. I mean, after all, even Adolf Loos welcomed it back, so to speak, if we consider the very ornamental marbles that he uses sometimes in his buildings, which are highly ornamental. And even Miss van der Rohe in the Barcelona pavilion, he used very aristocratic marble, if I can call it so, highly ornamental. So those who imagine that Mies only worked within the field of so-called minimalism, they are wrong. And it's enough to look at pictures with the Barcelona pavilion by Mies van der Rohe to see what I'm talking about. There are large surfaces of marble, which are almost like the butterfly, the wings of the butterflies, in terms of a very rich, beautiful ornamentation. This is not done with expensive material. This is, craft, human craft, and ornamentation. But it is important, because otherwise this facade would have been, just like countless other facades. Another house from 1914, 1931. This one, was built during a longer time, as you can see. It's a more ample house, but even here, I admire the intervention of the architect in a context without glory, if you want. Yes, there is a ruined wall, and again, it's about artistry. There is architectural embroidery here, as I call it. Look at what is here on the top. We have even a narrative art here. I don't know what to verbalize about this, human presence at the top, but it's really about a richness of artistic expression, which today we do not have. We do not have, because we killed. We actually are killing architecture in the name of what? Functionalism. Rationalism, speed, efficiency. This is not an exceptional building, but there are interesting things happening. Small details that attract your attention, where you see, in a way, the soul of the architect. Even this beautiful little window in the corner, which the rationalist would say is not possible, because here we need either the column or this is the corner. What are you doing? You are ruining the building. Well, it was not ruining the building, okay? And it was done probably here too. I find it very nice, this touch of artistic capriciousness, as I put it. As for this, tower, if I am to call it so, itself has a certain character. Why did they play with the bricks here in this way? Why? Well, we can ask many things, about nature. Why was, this done in this way, and why not in that way? Again, you see the architect indulging in creativity. Even what he did here at the top, I think, is very nice. And I don't know. I am aware. I am repeating myself because I think we can learn a lot from Jujol and from architects like him if we get rid of the many dogmas, functionalists and rationalists that create misery actually in our hearts and maybe even in our brains. Because I think it's very liberating. I mean, look at what he does here. You cannot think of these things when you are at the drafting board or in front of a laptop. This you have to be on the site and work with elements, natural or otherwise, that you find there, incorporate spontaneously, probably to an extent, in the structure of bricks. This is a type of architecture that relies to a good extent on improvisation. It's some kind of a jazz or jazzistic architecture, jazz architecture. And beautiful examples from vernacular architecture testify about the same thing. Something we as rational, so-called rational human beings are not even accustomed to attempt, to do this kind of, so-called hybrid, impure, capricious architecture. Playful, yes, but, again, the rationalists would not accept such a window here in the corner, would simply not accept it. Well, Jujol accepted it and promoted it. I don't know who this person is, but this fountain probably was also designed by Jujol, and so was this, which I find very beautiful. And you would say, well, why did he complicate himself? Well, this is what artists do. They complicate themselves with so-called unusual things. But what would life be without these unusual things or useless things? Why was this thing planted there at the top? Why? What is its function? Well, what are the functions of the many sculptures that adorn the buildings of Andrea Palladio, for example? What would the functionalist and the rationalist say? And we all admire Palladio, but what do we learn from Palladio? Not much. Now another building equally capricious, particularly on this elevation. Yeah, again, I think the functionalist and the rationalist would tremble. They cannot imagine that an elevation of a building can be like this. We only play with prisms that, are in cantilevered. This is the only thing that stirs up our imagination. We place a prism on top of a hill, very long, with a very long cantilever part. That's it. But for that you don't need a lot of imagination. Here you do. And this elevation is, you might like it, you might not like it, but it doesn't leave you indifferent. It has personality. Compare it with this elevation here or with this elevation here. This stands out. Why? Because the architect wanted to do something, and the interior is magnificent. You'll see it. Anyway, I'll try to go slow. I thought I have an image. Many architects have talent and attraction towards painting. The bidimensional art of painting complements the three-dimensional art of architecture, and they go together. And as Walter Gropius knew and expressed it in the Bauhaus Manifesto, painters, sculptors, and architects work together. This is what Jujol did in his own way in this building and other buildings. I don't know if he employed painters, but he employed his own attraction to painting and his talent for painting and his interest in ornamentation. And all of a sudden, this space is richer. It's not just space, an abstract space. It's rich, it's colorful, it's complex, and maybe it even has a narrative that I cannot decipher because I don't know, but It's possible. Do we do narrative architectures today? No. What do our buildings say? What is the story that a building tells today? I don't think too many people, too many architects build narrative architectures, buildings that tell a story. Our buildings don't tell any story. This is the truth. They might be interesting in, you know, as three-dimensional, you know, constructions, I don't know, in terms of space, but that's about it. There is nothing else. While here, I mean, just look here, you know, it's so much richness. And he did this without the computer, without parametric design, without scripting and programming. Again, you would say, why? Well, why did he do this? Why this? Why this? Why two colors? Why and why and why? Well, we don't ask this question in front of most of the buildings of the present, do we? Because there is nothing to ask. They are plain, you know, white walls, the building is a prism, you know, there is no puzzlement, there are no questions, things are simple. Look at this entrance. I find it very interesting. Look what he did here. You know, there is a level of exaltation here. How many architects today are exalted? Very few. Exaltation is condemned. What do you mean exaltation? The architect is supposed to be a sober minimalist and functionalist, to work, you know, in a very simple language, and that's it. No playfulness of this sort. No. No and no again. So we build what we see here. That's what we build. And we think this is architecture. And we think this is nonsense. Well, I don't think it is nonsense. Look at this interior. My God, you would say this is not possible. It's simply not possible. But for the children, look at the eyes of the child. He's wondering, it's like in a way, and the girl too. Now imagine these two children in one of our buildings. They have nothing to point with their finger towards. Nothing, because there is nothing to stir up their curiosity. But here, there is a lot, and this is just one room. That's it. But look what room. You say this is Baroque, this is crazy, this is bizarre. Well, you know, it might be, but it's rich, and it's complex, and it's colorful, and it stirs up the imagination, the curiosity of the children. Well, that's not a little thing, is it? There are many things happening here, you know, and most of them have to do with, you know, the devilish ornament, which we banish from architecture because we think ornament is evil. Well, I'm not so sure at all about it. You know, without ornament, this space, this room would be meaningless and banal. And with it, it becomes very complex. We only accept something like this in churches of the past. But this is not a church, and it's not even so old, you know. I mean, yes, it's 100 years old. You would say these Catalans, you know, they are exotic, you know, there because of the, you know, the proximity to the Mediterranean Sea, and the sun is stronger, and Salvador Dali was born not far away. And of course, they are crazy, these people, you know. They are not crazy. They are just alive in a way which is unknown to us. That's what it is. Picasso, no? Salvador Dali, Ricardo Bofill and Taller de Arquitectura, until they left Barcelona. It's a certain joie de vivre that is unknown to us. We are so sterile, really, with our white walls. I don't know what these are. I guess some drawings left by Jujol, sketches. Yeah. The architect as an artist, you know, and This is something that we try to repress. I mean, the schools of architecture repress, the profession represses, everybody represses, but I think the loss is great. The Sacred Heart of Jesus Church. This is a church he built 1918, 1924. Look at this. It's a small church. It's no Sagrada Familia. But I think it has a lot of skill and a lot of interesting things here. And we are going to see. Look at this magnificent, configuration here. Look at the brickwork. Look at, I mean, there are intricate things here. And it's a small building, this is the entrance. But you can tell it belongs to the earth, but it also belongs to culture. As Alvarado well said, architecture belongs to culture, not to civilization. Its complexity, considering that it's a small building, is astonishing. And yet it's not an irrational work. It's not a work that you would say this work is only disorder, is chaos, it doesn't have. No, it's organized. You will see the plan. I hope I have the plan here, but not just the plan. Geometry was very present. And the interior is very, very skillfully done. Look at two sections through the building. For this, you need you need knowledge about how to do this, elegantly, but also structurally in a plausible way. Very nice work, really. Jujol, who is probably unknown to at least 95, if not 97, if not 98% of all architects in the world, if not more. And I hope I have here even the drone is there for some quick pictures. I hope I have. I want you to see the structure inside the church, which is beautifully done, and I think it's beautifully done because it is both about multiplicity and unity, verity and unity. Again, it's not Sagrada Familia. In a way, it's a more subdued work, more reticent work, if we can talk about reticence, looking at what we look at. But since architecture is about quality, not quantity, I think it's a very, very fine work. And it might be that this person here and those who take pictures, some of them might be architects. I hope. This is the plan. And I love this plan. I mean, look at it. It's actually rational. But then at the center, we have the big enigma of the big X, which could be a metaphor for God. It's symmetrical, this part, if you take this axis here that divides the building diagonally in two parts, it is in good measure a symmetrical building with a slight asymmetries, and this makes it interesting, exactly like in nature. In nature, there are such betrayed symmetries. I think Jujol was a superior architect, and is shown very well in this building. Now, the modernist would say, wait a minute, isn't this a square? Approximately, yes, it does seem to be a square. Well, why complicate ourselves with all these unnecessary things? It's a square, right? Let's make it a cube, and that's it. But look at the beauty of this drawing. It brings joy to my eye and to my heart and to my imagination. And it's not complicated. It's not a complicated architecture. It's both ordered and slightly disordered, which makes it alive. Now, this is a recent, graphic representation of the plan. And look at this. I don't think there can be a human being who can dislike this. You know, and it's all engineering, it's all structure, but it's a structure which does not reject the ornament. It is made sensitive through the presence of ornamentation. This is something we forgot. But when Patrick Schumacher declared not too long ago that ornament and structure should not be separated, and he's right, they should come together, the structure and the ornament. Here you have both. Now, another building, Torre house. This is a house which is maybe not so spectacular after we just saw the church that we looked at. But even here, look at the eventfulness of this entrance into the building. I don't know, maybe he was also operating here with an existing building. Maybe he just added certain things, I don't know. But all in all, he added something to this building, particularly this part at the entrance, then certain ornamentations around the windows, trying to make them eventful. You know, some people will say this looks a little bit folkish, it's not what a serious architect does. That's our conception, but you know, that conception about architecture was not always the same. Now, of course, if you compare the building with the tree, this tree is splendid in its expressionism, you know, but I don't think that the building is an insult to the tree. It's simpler, maybe, you know, less, you know, expressionistic and tormented, but still the soul of the architect, I think, was present, at least to an extent. Casa Planels, Barcelona, 1923-1924. This is a building that you are going to see today is on the diagonal, the famous avenue in Barcelona. From what I read, was not built exactly as he wanted, but still, I think is a very remarkable building in a city which has, of course, other remarkable buildings. We are going to see it. I want to see first. Well, I wish I had better pictures, but he built this building. I understood with some serious modifications from either the builder or I don't know what happened, but even so, it has character, and I think it's interesting, you know, with its curves, and it has even a certain slenderness. So if you arrive in Barcelona, you know, it's impossible to avoid the diagonal avenue, as it is called, the diagonal, and somewhere on that diagonal you'll see this building, Jujol. We are going to see also some pictures from the inside, but let's go back to the first pictures. If we compare him to Gaudí, Antoni Gaudí, we can see that at least in this building, he's a little bit more, you know, moderate. Now, I know that Oscar Wilde said the moderation is fatal and only excess succeeds, but I don't know. In another place, I think he said moderation should always be there. There should always be moderation, and even moderation inside moderation. In other words, to be moderate even about moderation. He played a little bit with words, but in other words, you know, if you are moderate, you should put a limit to that moderation and sometimes allow excess to manifest itself. And there is this here, you know, this you could say is the breaking of the moderation through the excess of this so-called irregular shape, which, you know, in a way celebrates the meeting, the conjunction between the building and the diagonal avenue and with the city at large. So it's charged with a certain expressivity that is probably needed. At least this is what the architect Jujol thought. He could have left the building this way, but no. He understood that, you know, perhaps because of the special positioning of the building should give something to the street, an important street, an avenue in Barcelona. And he did. Exactly because of this so-called monstrous distortion, if you are to use such words. Jujol in Barcelona. Again, the rationalist would throw stones at capriciousness, would say, wait a minute, this is irrational, it's capricious, we should stay away from capriciousness. Why? It's part of life. It's part of our subjectivity. And subjectivity cannot be erased. And I think shouldn't be erased. An old picture. Yes, they do have a lot of motorcycles in Barcelona. It's true. Just like in Italy, some places. Anyway, Josep Maria Jujol. Now, Montserrat Sanctuary, in full name, Our Lady of Montserrat Sanctuary. This is another church. It's called the Sanctuary. It was unfinished from 1926 to 1935. La Otra Sagrada Familia, that's how it was called, the other Sagrada Familia. It's not part of the city, it's on top of a hill, it seems. And it's interesting. I personally like more the other church because of the brick, the redness of the brick. This one, for my taste, is a little bit too grayish and whitish, but it has qualities, no doubt, because there is a lot of weaving, you know, and architecture at its best, in my opinion, cannot say no to weaving. A lot of things are woven here, you know, the brick tower, the brick walls, you can see how it was erected, how it was built, brick by brick by brick. Again, could we say that ornamentation is not present here? Of course it is, in a major way. But the building is woven. And these embroidered walls, to me, are very seductive. I don't care maybe too much about these things here. I don't know. They're unfinished, as it was declared. It was unfinished, and I guess these parts perhaps they have a lesser level of elaboration than what we see here. It's possible that this might be the reason. Otherwise, it would have been, I would think, a remarkable building. And it still is, you know, even unfinished as it is. Maybe someone should do something about this. I think here we can talk about being unfinished. Otherwise, it's rather finished. This small building to be called the other Sagrada Familia is not a little thing at all. Sorry about the picture with this so-called authorship spread all over the picture. I don't understand these people. They are ruining good pictures. Even a small building can be meaningful and beautiful if you put your heart and your talent in it. Look at this. This is architecture. And let's compare this with what we do. Well, Most of the time, we cannot do that comparison. Because here there is a logic, a structural logic, but there is also an ornamental logic, if I can call it so. You know, it's function and beauty, or form and function. They complement each other. You could say form follows function, but you could also say maybe function follows form. They complement each other, yes. Plus, form has a function. Its function is beauty, and beauty is needed. Without beauty, what would architecture be? Of course, you take pictures. You know, even if you are not trained in architecture, you take pictures because it is enticing, it is provocative in the good sense of the word, it is inspiring, it provokes an emotion. Then you search for the camera. Look at this. You saw it's a detail. Look at the intricacies of the brickwork. You know, I mean, this requires a lot of knowledge, not just inspiration. And again, he benefited, I'm sure, of great craftsmen. You cannot be, look, it looks like a giant cathedral when in fact it's very small. The house of God, built by an architect and some workmen who helped him. Bravo to them. It must be a joy to do such architecture. An architect with bad luck. This is how he was described, Jujol. But looking back on the works that we saw done by him, I don't think he had such a bad luck. He left something behind. There are books being published by him. He created beauty, and we talked about him today on his birthday. Happy birthday, Jujol. And thank you for being here today.